Hi guys, welcome back to the next episode of the SamDjanShow. Then talking about why the Xbox One failed, so let's get into it. Welcome back to the next episode of the SamDjanShow, where we talk about pop culture and talking about why the Xbox One failed. Before you do, don't forget to subscribe and click notification bells. So then talking about why the Xbox One failed. So let's get into it. I think the first one is the launch. Now, the Xbox. Now, when they did the launch back in 2013. The Xbox was supposed to come out November 21st, 2013, which I think the PlayStation was November 15th, and it was going to be $499 in the US. And the day one edition. Yeah, that was the moment right there that sealed the fate of the Xbox One. Then a few hours later, the PlayStation 4 was announced, and I think that was $399, so $100 less, which I think they learned from the PS3, because I think the Xbox 360 was really cheap, and then the Xbox, a year later we had the PlayStation 3, and that was worth way more. So yeah, they kind of learned a lesson for the PlayStation 3, and I think the PlayStation 3 was around, I think, £600, and the 360 I think was 500. So what went wrong with the Xbox One? Now the ninth generation, or no, the eighth generation, which was the Xbox, One, the PlayStation 4, and I think you can technically say the Wii U, and the Nintendo Switch, but yeah, the Switch, we talked about that, the Wii U. So the problem was the launch, and I think they talked about TV. And this is just when the Xbox 360. And I think they talked about TV functionality and stuff, whereas Xbox kind of gave up. And I think the DRM. The biggest problem was the DRM strategy. So the first thing was all games, even the physical ones, were tied to your Xbox Live account. Now that on the surface, it might not seem like a bad thing. Obviously, all of digital games. But however, the problem was that even the physical DVD that you would have gone out and bought in physical Blu-ray, that would have been tied to you permanently. So that meant a lot of things that were some upsides. So, for example, you could share with up to 10 of your family members, and you could actually share an Xbox game with one of your Xbox Live friends. Now you had to do that only once, so you couldn't just be constantly swapping back and forth and had it in your possession for at least 30 days. But that was theoretically a cool feature. The problem, though, was that you had to be online every 24 hours. So the thing is that this was where a lot of people got very upset, because before the Xbox One had actually been announced, Microsoft had kind of, in some ways, like, oh no, it won't always be online. And then they were me like, we're like, okay, it's always online. The biggest issue, though, was no trade-ins. Kind of okay, so the rule was the individual game publishers can actually choose what they wanted to allow you to do with the physical games, so that you bought. So obviously right now in the ultimate policy was that you would buy it, you sell it. It's just simple. But back in the Xbox One, when they first announced it, essentially if a publisher wanted to, they could say, oh, you know what, that physical copy, you can never sell it again, and it can never be reactivated by anyone else. Well, alternatively, they could have charged you $10-20, whatever they wanted, to reactivate that code for the game. This, I don't need to tell you, went over just about as one might expect. Ultimately, this meant that the head of the Xbox One at the time, Don Maverick, was swiftly fired. Now I think the problem was the Kinect. To So another aspect that was poorly received is the Kinect. Now it's easy to forget today, but when Kinect first launched on Xbox 360, it was widely successful, and it really gave a lot of new life to the 360, which is almost 5 years old at this point. At that point, so it was natural that when Microsoft decided to start designing the Xbox One, they put a lot of emphasis on Kinect 2.0, except they maybe put a little too much emphasis on the new version of the Kinect. Now, I actually read like Kinect, sure, it was a little big and bulky, but you could absolutely say the same thing about the Xbox One. And the voice recognition features were actually really useful. I mean, you got to have to remember that this was years before things like Google Assistant, as well as Siri and Alexa had kind of completely taken over the world, and sort of smart home ecosystem. Now, the actual camera functions, I think, were a little bit more of a gimmicky style. Yeah, it was higher, and there were some games, but generally speaking, the actual usefulness of the Kinect has been regulated to like a ghost one of these days. That was emblematic of a large overall issue with Xbox One. It was just simply trying to do too many things at once. Because of that, pretty much everything suffered. So, for example, when the Xbox first came out, they had the famous TV sort of presentation. They focused very heavily on the media functions, some of which were cool, but things like the HDMI input to allow to route something like your cable box and the function as a DVR were theoretically cool. But it was also be finally realized and also be scrapped several years into the Xbox. So the backwards compatibility. I think you can play Xbox 360 games. With the PlayStation 4, you can only play. I don't think you could play any previous PlayStation game on it. Whereas the Xbox One, I think you play Xbox 360 games. Yeah, Sony pretty much abandoned the backwards compatibility for the PlayStation 4. But you can stream them on the PlayStation now, the games. But so they announced they're bringing Xbox 360 games to the platform pretty quickly. The games were coming, and at a very rapid rate. So backwards compatibility. But the main thing is that your current Xbox 360 disc that you could play for $1 at the game, so it could be dropped with Xbox One, and after a quick download, or maybe slightly longer download, but importantly, after free download, you'll be up and running. Xbox One playing your good old play. That's the place with his games. And yeah, so the PlayStation 5 has the PlayStation 4, but there's a difference between some games of your previous games versus the Xbox Series X, which can play that. It can almost play every single Xbox game ever, regardless of which platform it was made for. Next, you had the Game Pass, which is kind of you could play games and stuff. The £15, it was $5 to $15 a month. So yeah, Game Pass. Then we know the PS4 was outselling the Xbox One. Obviously we had the Series S and Series X, but I think the original Xbox One failed. Then we had the Series S and the X. So, that's pretty much it with the Xbox One, which I think was successful. My brother had it, like he had Xbox 360, the original one, and I think he had the new one. Yeah, we always go back and forth which one was better. Obviously, it was Xbox, and eventually they get PlayStation 4 and 5. I never had a console at the time. The first console I got was a PlayStation 4, and yeah, I did have Nintendo. The first one I had was PlayStation 4, Obviously, I sold it, have a PlayStation 5. I have the Slim now. I did unboxing on that, which I've never had an Xbox, and I don't think I need to because I feel like all the games there, they're all on PlayStation. I don't care for Halo and all that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I might get a Switch too. I don't know. I did have original Switch, obviously I don't have that anymore. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. So guys, so much on video. See my next one.